All right, what's happening, guys? It's been almost 48 hours into the NBA free agency tampering period, I guess you could say, where free agents are allowed to reach agreements with teams. And obviously, in a few days is when things will be official once the league year officially gets underway. But the biggest news has already pretty much happened when it comes to free agency. Obviously, we expect trades to still happen, especially in this crazy kind of change of way that the NBA salaries are functioning, the cap, the second apron, all those things, which are a lot to explain. But basically, in my understanding and the way I'll explain it is the second apron has become a hard cap. Teams now try to get away from it as much as they can, unless they really think that this is the season that they can win the title, in which case I think they are willing to go into the second apron, take that chance. But when they see that, whether it be an injury or just see that they may not be able to keep up with the top teams, it seems like it's time to sell and get out of that second apron, just like the Celtics are doing. Obviously, the Tatum injury is what triggered that. So the Celtics is a prime example of a team that is realistic to think, all right, this isn't our year to win the championship. So instead of being hard capped and essentially a second apron team, which also they would face a repeater tax if they are in the second apron for back-to-back years. So they try to get away from that, use this as a gap year, which is why they offloaded Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, losing a couple other guys, probably like Luke Cornett, now Horford. And by doing so, kind of resets them. Now they can get back under that second apron. And if they try to be, a little more aggressive, maybe even just get under the first apron as well. And then at that point, just save money, have this be a kind of depth building year, let Jaylen Brown get more experience running the show, and then possibly load up on free agency and sneak back up into that second apron for the following year, where that would be their first year there, and they wouldn't pay a repeater tax. That's how I understand it. Seems smart to me, like a team like the Celtics, and there's just a great example of what is happening with that. And another example that we're seeing is guys just aren't getting paid as much as they used to, which I personally, not that I want these guys to get paid less, but I love that part of this kind of new bargaining agreement with the NBA, because I think now real GMs, the good GMs, they got to do some good GMing. Now they're not just, paying guys some crazy, ridiculous money, signing guys to crazy deals, because suddenly one bad contract can ruin your whole season. And not just possibly for this year, but for years ahead. So, all right, a quick recap of the big winners and the big losers. I have my top three. We'll start with the big winners. Obviously, for me, it starts with the Houston Rockets. I think what the Houston Rockets did was great. Not only did they retain guys like Steven Adams, retained other free agents as well. I looked this up earlier to make sure I got the names right. Jeff Green, Aaron Holiday, and Jae'Sean Tate are staying there with them. But quite possibly the biggest signing of this free agency period. It wasn't a very big name free agency period, but Dorian Finney-Smith was a free agent, a great 3-and-D player, and the Rockets signed him away from the Lakers. So that was pretty big for them. They signed Dorian Finney-Smith. And on top of that, they signed Clint Capella, which is kind of a heavy, they got a lot of bigs on that team with Steven Adams. Now obviously adding Capella, Alperen Sengun's already there. I don't really see it making much sense for Clint Capella, but if you're the Rockets, why not get another big? If anything, you have an asset that later you can trade if you need to, if there's a weakness on your team that you see later. And ultimately, I just think they're big winners. The biggest acquisition wasn't in free agency from them. It was getting Kevin Durant. So don't forget that. So already by getting Kevin Durant, they improved their team a lot. And now in free agency, obviously, they continued that. The Denver Nuggets, also a big winner. Obviously, Jokic, people made a big deal out of the GM saying that hopefully they don't have to trade Jokic one day. They're not going to trade Jokic, but he was just being upfront and honest and realistic about how, the new bargaining agreement works. And to his credit, they traded Michael Porter Jr. to Brooklyn. They bring in Cam Johnson, which for me at worst is a 1-for-1, but I think Cam Johnson is going to fit great with that team. And then with the extra money that they saved from offloading that Michael Porter Jr. contract, they brought in back Bruce Brown is back. Tim Hardaway Jr. joins the squad. And if you've watched the Nuggets, three-point shooting was their weakness. They strengthened that by getting Bruce Brown, by getting Tim Hardaway Jr. Like I said, we can say that Cam Johnson and Michael Porter Jr. are a wash, but Cam Johnson is known to be a great three-point shooter as well. So, and then they bring in a big and Jonas Valanciunas, who's great to back up, Jokic. Now at least Jokic, when he rests, hopefully they can hold the ship there, and you don't have to see DeAndre Jordan minutes. So I think they're doing a great job. And really the only losses other than that is Dario Saric, which, is not really a loss. He didn't really play anyway. And Westbrook, which I do think as much heat as Westbrook, gets, he was solid off the bench for them. And he will be missed, but he is, with that team, he was replaceable. They got young guys that possibly should be getting more minutes there to try to develop and, take those Russell Westbrook minutes. And my third and final winner, which in no particular order, but don't look now, but the Atlanta Hawks might be next year's Indiana Pacers. This team, I could see them making the finals with how weak in the Eastern Conference is. They lose a couple guys. Larry Nance is gone and Karis LeVert is gone. He goes to Detroit. Larry Nance is going back to Cleveland. But they did some good work. They bring in Kristaps Porzingis off of the fact that, like we mentioned earlier, the Celtics were looking to offload some big contracts. The best possible move they made was on draft night, where they moved down 10 spots in the draft, but also got a first-round pick for next year, which is Indiana's first-round pick. And we'll talk about the Pacers soon, but the Pacers are not going to be as good next year already because of Halliburton's injuries. Free agency hasn't gone great for them, and that is a potential pick swap that they could use with Milwaukee, who will get to them as well. It doesn't look great for Milwaukee either. So that pick swap is super valuable. You are pretty much getting whatever pick you choose from, whether it's the Bucks or the Pacers next year. And so the Hawks are in great position now. They're in great position into the future. And I mean, I just think the Atlanta Hawks, I love what they've been doing. And, I think they've got all the right pieces, and they also bring in Nickeil Alexander-Walker from the Wolves. That's going to hurt the Timberwolves. This guy's a potential starter. So he's, if anything, a sixth man at worst, pretty much. And he can play defense. He can shoot the ball. So solid pickup there. And I love what the Atlanta Hawks are doing, especially in a weakened Eastern Conference. Don't be surprised if that's a team that, ends up being in the finals out of the East next year. So to the losers, we start with the Lakers, because all this talk about them trying to get a big, they ain't got a big yet. LeBron picked up his option, so that's $50 million with LeBron. Luka's making $50 million. They kind of don't really have anywhere to go. Next year, they're going to have to pay Austin Reeves, so it almost certainly seems like this is LeBron's last year there, unless he's going to take a significant pay cut. I don't see the upside with the Lakers. And truthfully, Luka's getting older, and it's harder to stay in shape the older you get, and I would be worried. If I was a Laker fan, I would be worried, because it seemed like this was the all-in move right now. LeBron, Luka, and I don't mean all-in move to win this year. Everyone knew that they needed a big, but it's kind of hard for them to find a way to do that. And if they don't do that in the next 2 seasons or 3 seasons even, and build a championship title team around Luka, again, unless Luka changes completely how he works out and who he is and how he plays defense, at some point soon, they're going to start running out of time with Luka. I know it's early to say that, but again, he doesn't strike me as a guy that's getting more and more in shape the older he gets and more professional. It seems to go the opposite with him. So we'll see how that all plays out. A big loser as well for me is the Indiana Pacers. And I'm not necessarily blaming them, but I'm just saying they're a big loser because obviously Halliburton goes down. So that changes everything for next year. And then to avoid just getting into the luxury tax, not even second apron, just the luxury tax, first apron, you call it. They didn't want to do it. And they didn't want to pay Miles Turner, and he walks. And ultimately, I don't even think Miles Turner is an incredible player, but just for asset management, I would have kept him. You can deal him later. Maybe the Lakers will need a big later. Maybe they're so desperate for a big that you can swindle them into giving you Austin Reeves. Who knows? But they just let him walk for nothing. And that is a no-no in the NBA, especially when you could have re-signed him, not gotten into the second apron, which is complete death. You don't want to go there unless you're a championship team. So I think the Pacers dropped the ball there. And the last team that I'm disappointed in, and a big loser for me, is the Milwaukee Bucks, People might be high on them because they think now that they brought in Miles Turner, that they give Giannis someone that could play, but they buy out Dame Lillard's contract, which he was due $50 million this next year and 50 something mil the next year. So $113 million over the next 2 years. They buy him out. What that means is it spreads out the whole remaining money for the next 5 years. So for the next 5 years, the Milwaukee Bucks are essentially starting off at a 20, little bit over $20 million disadvantage to the rest of the teams in the NBA, give or take. So, I mean, other teams also have dead money on the books, but not 20-something million dollars like the Bucks do. So automatically right there, if I'm Giannis, I don't know why I would want to stay there now for 5 years when we are already at a disadvantage in salary cap space. So that's just crazy to me that they did that. They did it out of desperation, which I don't even know where that came from, because I know that the media is doing this, and it's kind of been annoying me that they're like, will Giannis stay? Will Giannis not stay? He's still under contract for another 2 seasons. We don't do that about every player that's under contract for 2 seasons. And I just don't like it. It's like a forced narrative. And on the other hand, if I'm the Bucks, I would have just blocked out that noise. I have him under contract for 2 years, but instead it's almost like they panicked. They buy out Dame Lillard just so they can get Miles Turner, and they lost Brook Lopez, and I don't think Miles Turner is that much of an upgrade. And now you essentially paid Miles Turner more than you would have had to pay Brook Lopez to just retain him. But you also, by getting Miles Turner, stuck yourself in a minus $20 million hole in free agency for the next 5 seasons. 5 seasons. So I would have just, understood, what, next year without Dame might not be great. At that point, we have a $50 million player that's not playing. That sucks. And it is what it is. But the following year, he's an expiring contract. Maybe we can trade him. And if we don't end up trading him, like, we are not going to ruin the future of our franchise. That you could re-sign Giannis to another 5-year deal after that and tell him, like, hey, this $50 million slot that Dame has is going to open up for us now. We can use that for free agency, and we will go in and become a second apron team that very first year right after to try to get a title with you and whatever other free agents we bring in with that money. They didn't do that. Now they're in the whole $20 million for the next 5 years, just at a disadvantage to everybody else in the NBA. Insane. I don't get it, but that's what happened. So that's my recap on the first, give or take, 48 hours of free agency. I'll, knock out another podcast the next couple of days and see where we're at. There'll probably be some more trades. I don't know about mega trades, but maybe. It's unpredictable time in the NBA. We really don't know. And with the collective bargaining being what it is, it really is unpredictable.